I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And today we have a very special guest with us. We have Brandon from Southern Gothic podcast with us. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us for today's My Favorite Ghost Stories.
Thank you for having me today. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So Brandon is actually a NOLA native, and I know we have a lot of listeners from NOLA, so they're going to be very excited to hear about your various experiences and stories from your childhood, I'm sure. But you live in Nashville now, right?
Correct. I live just south of Nashville. I live down in a town called Franklin, which is a whole Civil War town down here. Had a pretty vicious battle. They call it the Gettysburg of the South. So we have a lot of ghosts. I do ghost tours down here and a lot of kind of dark history here as well. Not to compete with New Orleans by any means, but you know, it's a good time for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Brandon, you want to tell them a little bit about your podcast for those of our listeners who may not have heard of your podcast before or may have not listened yet, but
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Southern Gothic, it's a show. It's a narrative show. So it's just me talking, unfortunately, guys. There's no guests or anything. You just got to listen to me. Essentially, what I do is I tell ghost stories. I tell dark history, things of that nature from all across the South. So, of course, I've covered a couple Savannah stories, a bunch of New Orleans stories, all over, anywhere Southern. Talk a little bit about dark history, ghost stories, old legends, old folklore, a little bit of true crime, some Victorian stuff like that. And what I typically do is I tell the story and we kind of break it down more from almost like the story itself rather than the paranormal angle, right? Like how did this story develop and what might be true in the past? And a lot of what, you know, folks who actually go out in the field and do ghost hunts might do before they go is kind of what I do. I joke. The show is basically based on tell me what your mama told you and we'll go look it up for you. How about that? Right.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, you did a great episode on the boo hags of Savannah and Charleston. We reference the boo hags all the time, so it was fun to listen to that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we actually have a boo hag set behind us. So.
Literally.
Really? Oh, you got a bed back there, huh?
Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
Lots of beds, actually.
Yeah.
We've got multiple, and
all the terrible things happen to people in their beds.
It's true, actually.
It's a great story. Yeah, it's a great story. It's something, I didn't even really know much about it. Being from down in New Orleans, it's such a different culture. It's such a different spot, and there's so many stories there. I'm joking. Really, I think I'm here. I just want to debate you guys on the name. Let's be honest. Most haunted city, like.
Oh, I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Nola loves to give us beef about this. But
Every haunted city loves to do just that.
Right. Yeah.
And it's my only. Because I didn't really sign off on the name, but my only real defensible thing is how hauntings are embraced here. Literally everywhere you go, it is celebrated. This is a celebrated haunted town. So even when you go to these other places that have a rich haunted history, a lot of that history is still sort of on the other side of the track of normal, still on the other side of the track. So this is the town where, you just have the most acceptance, the widest acceptance of ghostly occurrence, which is it's a fantastic place to be into the supernatural, because here it's like, you don't have a ghost in your house? Oh, that's so sad. It's like every house is haunted. Right. Your house isn't haunted. Oh,
who do you have coffee with?
Bless your heart.
I totally get it. Yeah. There's haunted tourism especially has become such big business, right?
And it was
to have a place that is the magnet for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think Savannah has the most ghost tours per capita
I believe so. I
in
mean,
the
we're up to
U.S.
like 200
Yeah, it's and
Oh my
that's just
for
one.
gosh.
1 square mile. There's only one
Yeah.
square mile of
Yeah.
historic district, and there are walking tours, riding tours,
Pedal
pedal
pubs.
pubs, all kinds
Yeah,
of tours. So
Yeah, you
it's
can,
just
yeah,
amazing.
spirits and spirits and yeah,
absolutely. That's everybody's
sure.
favorites is the spirits with spirits and things like that. But yeah,
I remember when I first moved here, there was one. There was one ghost
Uh-huh.
tour, and then it just exploded.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's even in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. To understand us, you have to understand our dead, and so it's just kind of ingrained in us.
It really is.
But now,
Right.
on to the stories of our favorite ghost stories. Now, do you have a story from your childhood growing up in NOLA? I can only imagine, living there. People probably told you all sorts of creepy types of stories
Yeah.
and things like that. Do you have one in particular that you are fond of?
Well, I've got a lot from down there. I'll tell you the truth, and I'm probably going to be the only guest that'll come on here and say like I've never really had my own experience. I've
Really?
never like had my own. Yeah, I spent. I mean, I've been doing this for years. I go to all these places. Been to Waverly. Been to, like I mean, gone all done all these ghost hunts, done everything, and still haven't really had my own encounter. But have immersed myself in this stuff so much so. Most of what I come at is that angle of stories, like we were saying, and the one that really has captured my attention, my sister as well. My sister does a lot of research for the show. She's kind of my partner in crime for Southern Gothic. She's works in the French Quarter down there at the Louisiana State Museum. She's an archivist, a researcher
Oh,
by
awesome.
trade, and she's really gotten invested in one, and it's kind of taken off. It's this story of this voodoo priestess called Julia Brown. Okay, and Julia Brown, and now just outside of where we grew up right in the suburbs, right outside of the city. If you go a little further out of the city, you go to about halfway to Baton Rouge or so on the interstate. You're just going to be in swamps as you go from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, just out long bridges, long stretches of these bridges in the middle of nowhere. Used to be giant cypress forests, but they pretty much chopped a lot of these things down at this point. And it's kind of, it's growing back a little bit, but it's these old swamps and all. And there used to be a town that was about halfway between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and it was called Frenier. And this small town in Frenier, it was a logging town. It was all these German immigrants that had come to the city, because you guys are a port town as well. You understand, even though folks see New Orleans as like this French city, right? I mean,
Right.
really, it's like my best friend growing up was this big Italian family. There's so many different cultures, even though you kind of identified as French. And anyway, there's German immigrants out there, and they had this community out in the middle of the swamp out there. And this woman by the name of Julia Brown, her husband had gotten a land grant to go live out there. And this is the early 20th century. This is about 1915. A big hurricane comes through in 1915. This giant hurricane comes through. It destroys the town from top to bottom. Okay, just completely annihilates it. Over 400 people in southeastern Louisiana die that day. Well, it turns out there's a story to this, that Miss Julia Brown, who's living out there. She, of course, she was born into slavery. They moved out there at the end of the 19th century with her husband Celestin. She had some kids. They lived on the edge of town. Well, they say at some point, she became kind of the community's healer, right? She was that kind of root worker, that type of thing, right? Helped deliver the babies, helped with all these sort of, you broke your arm, something like that. And this community was so isolated that if you got sick, you'd have to wait a week for the train to come to get back to New Orleans. The only way back to New Orleans was train or boat, because you're out in the middle of the swamp. So you'd go see Aunt Julia, and get your help, right? Well, the one day, they say that just kind of her relationship with the town starts to sour, and her relationship with everything that's going on there is just, her husband passes away at one point. She starts to feel maybe neglected by the town. Maybe something happened. We don't know what it is. But folks start saying that one day they see her sitting out on the edge of town in a rocking chair in a little cabin, and she's just singing these ominous songs. When I die, I'm going to take the whole town with me. When I die, I'm
Right.
going to take the whole town with me, right? And sure enough, I already told you, this town's gone. Well, on Julia, sometime, I believe it was September 28th. I can't remember the exact date. I'm a storyteller, not a historian, right?
Sure.
And hold on, Julia. Eventually, for whatever reason, she's, I believe, somewhere in her 70s, almost 80 at that point. She actually passes away. Don't know why. She passes away at the end of September there. And of course, the town, what's going to happen, y'all, right? What's going to happen? Now, Julia said that something awful is going to happen now. So, they start preparing for her funeral and everything. And while they're at her funeral, what they don't realize is that this hurricane is headed their way. And the whole town is in this house at this funeral, whether it's to, honor the woman who delivered their babies, or maybe they're scared to death by the fact that, she might have cursed them. They all come out to the funeral, and that's when the wind starts picking up, and maybe they knew from newspapers, the train came by every now and then and would throw some newspapers out. Maybe they knew this storm was coming. Maybe they didn't. This is 1915, right? You didn't have Jim Cantori out there, kind of warning you about the storms, right? So, they're at this funeral when the winds start picking up, and you can just imagine the fear and everything that they had at this point. And sure enough, it plows through, and you had about 20 survivors from Frenier that day who were able to make it out to the train. Over 200 to 400 people died on that day. And this is all documented fact, right? This is all fact at this point. So this story, it's always really stuck with me. It stuck with me it's got all the New Orleans elements to it. And you can go out there today and you can actually go and take a swamp tour through the land that she owns and out there. And of course, some people have talked about, you can still hear at night if you're in that swamp, if you're out there fishing or something, you can still hear the screams from some of the people. Excuse me, say some of the survivors actually survived because they climbed trees. And they held on to the tree as the water's rising from this hurricane. And they survived by hanging on in the trees, and they could still hear people drowning below them. And you can imagine the horror of that from just this awful hurricane. And, so the town, Frenier, it's pretty much gone. Now if you go there today, there's still a sign there. There's swamp tours right outside of that. But I think if I tell you the real reason I probably love this story is because the best seafood restaurant is about a mile away from there. And so as a kid, it was like the special place where my parents would take us. I think it was like after I graduated high school, we went out to Middendorf's, and we, I tell my kids, we're going to go eat something that was alive this morning. Right. And go get some fresh fish out there. Right. And so I am totally passionate. I love that particular story. And over the years, we've been able to dissect it and break it down. We've spent a lot of time looking up who these people are because it's just undeniable. This woman, we can find a death certificate. We can find an obituary talking about her funeral and how all these people came to her funeral. And it was actually, and we also have this hurricane that's documented and it's factual and it's there. But was she a voodoo priestess?
Right.
That's the question. What really played into this? Was there supernatural? And it's been fascinating. And this particular story, one of the things that I enjoyed doing with Southern Gothic, and you guys are so hyper local in your stories. You'll probably recognize this too. How there's all these stories that I wouldn't have heard of being from New Orleans and Nashville about Savannah that are just incredible stories. Right? I mean, you could probably write 6 books about all these stories, all these places, and some of them might even be more compelling than the one that the Ghost Adventures go to, right?
Right.
Might even be really great stories that really tie in, but they'll never, ever get the chance to make it out of your city. And Julia Brown is one that it's starting to trickle out, and we're really excited about. So it's had a couple of shows have started showing it from time to time. And, there's been 1 or 2 shows that have kind of started talking about it. And with each new show, we kind of watching these new elements get talked about it, and how, some folks now are talking about maybe Aunt Julia wasn't actually cursing us down there in the swamp. Maybe Aunt Julia was warning us. We keep chopping down all these cypress trees, right? What's that going to do? That's going to make the hurricanes worse. It's going to make the storm surge worse. So she's warning us, like, y'all don't take care of my home, and it's going to be gone, and you're not going to be here. So that has by far been my favorite story that we've covered. It's something we spend a lot of time on. It feels like home to me. It's swampy, man, and I might have grown up in the suburbs, but you can't get out of the humidity even in your brain, even after leaving, right?
That's
So,
true.
yeah,
You got that
yeah,
right. I mean, that is such a cool story.
Oh
It
yeah,
really is.
absolutely.
I love cursed town stories. Like, um,
uh-huh,
it's well, and it's funny that you mentioned that it's not even necessarily confirmed that she was a high priestess or
Right.
whatever, but it's an interesting warning story. And there's so many of those that span all over the country of, these entities or people who are warning of disasters to come. We actually have a curse story in Savannah, the curse of Savannah,
Right.
but that
hmm
one's a little bit different. It's not any kind of voodoo or hoodoo or anything like that. I think he was like a
He was a
newspaper.
newspaper man. He was
Yeah.
literally a rival to the main newspaper. There are two newspapers in town. He was basically driven out by the rivals, and he had to shut down shop. And he literally cursed
In
Savannah.
his last article.
He leveled a
no
curse,
kidding.
and the it was very flowery, but the curse basically ended with "I curse you, Savannah, to remain exactly as you are."
And
Oh,
it
wow.
really,
And what was fascinating was Sherman's march would have burned it down to the ground. Didn't happen. All the modernization has kept the downtown area of Savannah pretty intact. So and a lot of the attitudes that are still held.
That's the real curse.
Well, and that was the real curse. The curse was you will not progress. You will not grow.
we did not get the Apple
Yeah.
Store. Charleston got that one.
Yeah, that's right. We don't have an Apple Store.
Yeah.
I tell you, there's a lot of curses in Georgia. What
yeah.
I've noticed from covering places all over. I mean, you got like the Lake Lanier out there is getting really popular as
Oh,
a
yeah.
Oh,
curse.
yeah.
You got was it Lorenzo Dow, who's the
Oh, yeah.
guy out, was it Jacksonboro?
Yeah.
You got Barnsley Gardens outside of Atlanta out there. There's that pillar in Augusta.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know what y'all did wrong, but like a lot of people ain't like y'all out in Georgia. I'll put it that way.
That is for
There's-
real.
We've got like a Hell's Gate in Forsyth, I think. There's a lot, and
No, I haven't heard that one. Wow.
yeah, it's a cemetery in Forsyth, Georgia. And it's weird because Georgia's super packed. It's like super packed. So like you will go through at least 3 ghost towns to get to your next town, but it's
Right.
not very far,
Yeah.
And you're always
That's
like, oh,
interesting.
how weird, because there's also like a million counties in Georgia. So peculiar. And so it's like, that's how territorial this state is. It's got all of these like encampments that decided we're our own county, we're our own seat, we're our own government. And I think that friction is definitely at play in a lot of these curses and a lot of these stories that kind of proliferate are the them and us sensation. It can be like block by block, the idea
Right.
and identity. Like if you look at your GPS in Savannah, it'll be like, oh, I'm in Liberty City. I'm in Lumber
Right.
City. It's like, what, why are there so many different cities in my little city?
Right. Well, and also Georgia in general, I think a lot of it has to do with the variety of the state. A lot of states, it's like one landscape and that's
Right.
what you get. We have like Savannah,
Right.
like coastal nonsense.
Flat
and
as all get out.
Super, super flat.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you get up into North Georgia and you're getting into Appalachia. So it's like you got a lot of, if you think about land spirits or indigenous spirits and things like that, we got a lot of it
Right.
going on.
Swamp,
It's
coastal,
Sure.
mountains.
everything you could possibly want,
Yeah.
practically
That's why the
desert.
film industry does so well here, is that they create locations out of everything. It's
Yeah.
easy to have a jungle right next to the desert, right next to the
Right. Mountains
the mountains
and-
or the woody forest.
absolutely.
It's definitely has an interesting history. I know with when I cover, since I kind of basically, cover a region of about 13 states, I typically see a lot of the same themes will come up, right?
yeah.
And you kind of get that. And just to top it off, here in the South, I mean, look, you got like 300 years of history to work with, right? This isn't like, doing Irish history, European. There's not a lot.
Exactly.
But so a place like Georgia is particularly interesting because you do have a place like Savannah that's a planned city, and it came over, and there's such a colonial bend to it, while at the same time you've got massive Civil War history. You have a lot of indigenous history. I mean, there's a lot of indigenous folklore there. And I even say that, there's a lot of indigenous folklore there that we made up about them is probably more, like Barnsley Gardens and a lot of those things, but there is, and it's such a unique state in that way. And, Louisiana has it, that southeastern Louisiana, just to compare the two of, it's got its own unique thing in a similar way, where, it's that port town type thing. You have this mass of all these different cultures, give it that unique blend that you're not going to get, in Mississippi or anything. You're not going to get in some of these other places. So, you definitely, and it's time to make people mad so you can have all these ghosts, right?
Right. Absolutely.
You get a long history to make people mad.
Absolutely. It's funny. JT and I had spent a lot of time up in North Carolina, and we've been saying that I just get this feeling every time I'm in Asheville. I'm like, the land spirits are mad about something, because just every time we go up there, it is just either bad luck or really intense storms or brutal blizzards or things like that. I'm like, something's brewing up in North Carolina.
Maybe it just doesn't take kindly to some Savannians showing up on their doorstep.
That's true. Well, it's funny. JT and I just spent a week up in Asheville, filming different Parajunkie exclusives, and we did Helen's Bridge. We were only planning to spend like a couple hours at Helen's Bridge for one episode. We went back a second time because we live streamed, and we were filming the episode talking about the history of the bridge, which is basically just this kind of local legend, but Asheville loves it. It's on their website, like their government
they
website.
Sell it, yeah.
They sell it. And it is just this creepy bridge over on Bowcatcher Mountain. But the legend went that this woman, there's like two different varying stories, but kind of the common one is that she had a house fire while she was cooking, and when she was going to save her baby, she passed out from smoke inhalation. She was able to be rescued, but the baby didn't make it. She just loses her mind afterwards. And so she ends up going out into the woods up to Zealandia Castle, if you will. It is a mansion, but goes out to the bridge, hangs herself from one of the steel beams. Well, teenagers hear that story because this happened in 1909. So, teenagers in the 50s onwards start hearing this story, and they take their cars out there. And the belief is that if you turn your car off underneath Helen's Bridge, say Helen 3 times very Bloody Mary-like, and try to turn on your car's not going to start.
Before history is written, it's played. Before it's frozen in time, it's fought one shift at a time. Before it's etched in silver, it's carved in ice. What happens next will last forever. The Stanley Cup Final on ABC and ESPN Plus begins Saturday.
And so a lot of car problems, a lot of phone problems. Well, we go out there. I bring my spirit box and whatnot. We weren't planning to do like any Estes method. I just wanted to see if anything comes through. Immediately, we get like just this entity that I don't think has any association with Helen, but since a lot of people would come out to the bridge to do whatever it is that they're doing, seances, Ouija boards, whatever, they're opening things and not closing it. And so it attracted something out there that immediately was saying, join them, attack coming soon.
Oh.
And all of these like very aggressive things while I'm sitting on the bridge, mind you, because we found the way to get up to the top of the bridge. So I'm sitting on the edge, and it's saying like, jump and things like that. And my dad is watching this. My dad has never come on any paranormal investigation with me at all. And so he's listening to this, and he's a very religious man. So he freaks out. He's panicking. He pulls out his cross, and he's like, big old spirits. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, you're never being invited back to the investigations again.
That is not going to help us investigate.
Well, and I told him that. I was like, but it makes for good content. I want to get it on camera. If it's going to push me, at least get it on camera, you know? But we decided to come back to see if we can pick up anything from the Estes method. And I don't think it was Helen that was coming through. There were some alluding storylines. There was like 2 storylines that came through. One was a woman who was named, Anna Lee. And I believe she was a slave who lived on the Zealandia property who was killed out on that bridge. And then there was one that alluded to like looking for a child or something like that. But then there was like this male spirit that was coming through and being like, shut up, both of you, basically. And then you rounded out with the darker entity coming back, which looking back, I think is a look back, which is very common to Appalachia. Because at one point, when we were leaving the first time, I saw this. So for those of you who, I don't know if this was a Parajunkie exclusive, but if you remember the photo from that camp that one of the listeners sent in, one of our Parajunkies sent in, it's this massive shadow figure that's like looming behind a tree, staring at a bunch of kids at a church
at a playground,
camp. Yeah, and so I saw almost exactly that, looking from around the tree. And I'm like, okay, not going to tell anybody because I'm with my family. They're going to panic. And so didn't think much of it. Well, after we did the Estes method, got the same thing about, saying that they were going to hurt me or telling me to jump, join them, all that jazz. We go back to the cabin, weird things start happening. And so we start, my dogs are losing their mind at something out in the woods. They're barking. It's like dusk, so we're like, okay, that's kind of odd. They're like just getting super, super territorial. We get locked out of the house multiple times. My dad felt like when he was in the house, he just felt this cold wind go through him.
Oof.
And so I'm like, I think we picked up a look back, and so we did a little bit of some protection type magic, if you will. But it's just that just tells me all I need to know about Appalachia and their spirits. They're hardy. They are hardy spirits, and
it's alarming how many bridges around the country have very similar stories. The Crybaby Bridge phenomenon, which is basically so many places have these bridges where if you go, you can hear a baby crying, which is to suggest that if there's running water under an architecture, it could cause a sound that mimics that. But I know that there's like one in Rock City. I know that there's one in Illinois. I know, and then you go further back into folklore and you realize that every time that they built a bridge, they had deep reservations about crossing over the water, about angering these spirits, and those beliefs and those things, they came from somewhere. They came from a lot of these fears. And it's easy enough to say it's hard to build a bridge when you don't have a lot of ingenuity, and so they probably fall over and they're like, we got to make sure that the spirits are happy or they'll push our bridge over, we're not the greatest architects in the world.
Right.
and our bridges keep collapsing. But the fact that there is so much superstition and so much belief in things like structures that go over water, or water itself, just running water itself, brings with it all kinds of spiritual stories, cultural stories that suggest that the spirits are there, that there is a stronger connection to spirits. So yeah, when because I'm thinking like Goatman's Bridge is a very similar thing. You get on that bridge, you're going to get in trouble with a dark spirit.
People were trying to say that Goatman came to visit Helen's Bridge too, and I'm like, I don't know if it's
that's a big stretch. That's a long haul for a person with goat
have
legs.
You guys been out to Louisville for the Pope Lick monster out there?
Oh yes, I haven't.
I have never been out there, but
been to Louisville. Yeah, Louisville's got a really interesting goat man, and you're right. The bridge is fascinating. I mean, I've covered tons of different bridges, tons of different stories. But there's a really interesting one with the Goat Man out in Louisville. It's right outside east of Louisville, and it's an old train trestle. An
Oh,
old train trestle
sure.
that goes across, right? And it's called the Pope Lick Creek, and they say that this Goat Man lives under the bridge. And then of course, there's stories about how, back in Depression era, he was born to a family, and the mother left him for a circus, and he became a sideshow act for a circus. And then one day, of course, as the train's coming into Louisville, it's a dark and stormy night, and lightning hits the train trestle, and the train falls off the trestle, and it crashes, and then the Goat Man's able to escape, and he's never left ever since then, right? And the variations of all these
Right.
stories,
A
right?
good
Or it
classic
could
story.
be, the product of a satanic ritual, and or this
Sure.
farmer did something with a goat is another one of the stories over
Naturally.
there, right? This is
Right.
outside of Louisville, and but this town, what really makes the Pope Lick monster so terribly unique is the real world implications that have come with it, because part of the story is that the way he attracts people to attack them is with voice mimicry. And what he does is he'll act like your old mama or something and get you to come up on the bridge or something, and then something awful is going to happen. And as a result, he's actually caused deaths, this legend or this reality, whichever way you want to look at it, because this train trestle is still an active train line. It's a main artery into Louisville. It's a train, and of course, it's like 200 feet up in the air, something like that. The track is just large enough for the train to get across. And of course, teenagers go on legend trip just like they do
Of course.
out at a kid ends up getting stuck up there. And of course, what you have a kid, either jumping off the bridge or getting hit by a train. And just as recently, I can't remember the date, I want to say it was 2019 or so. When I went to Louisville, I think it was this last December, they still have a lot of signs and flowers and stuff from a kid who decided to go searching for the Pope Lick monster and was hit by a train. So it's this actual lethal legend, whether you look at it in whatever
Right.
which way.
Supernatural or not, people are dying in pursuit of it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, but the train, the bridge thing is terribly interesting, from a historical perspective too, outside of the paranormal, is because there are so many of these small bridges all over from this different era that have been abandoned, right? Because interstates came through. So, so there's so many that you can do that are dilapidated. I know we have one that I covered was down in Mississippi called Stuckey's Bridge.
Oh, Stuckey's
And
Bridge.
It's just a dilapidated old bridge outside of Meridian. And, there's a story about a gentleman who was there, and he was capturing traders coming into town and killing them and stealing their stuff, right? And a fairly regular story. And now kids like to go out there. When you go drive out there, you're going down. I mean, it is a Mississippi mud, red dirt road to get to that bridge. There is not any more. So of course it's creepy, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just absolutely creepy, but they are all over. I mean, shoot, there's more in Mississippi I've been to. The hanging one obviously is a recurring theme. Here in Franklin, we have a bridge like that where, there was a lynching off the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And the bridge is no longer there. It's a new bridge, but yet, you still have conversations about that. I mean, we have a lot here in the South, especially with those bridges. Now, what I think is fascinating, though, what you were saying too, is that the other spirits that might be there. And I think this is what still boggles my mind, is that the story doesn't necessarily indicate all the trauma that happened at this
Right.
place, and in fact might not even be a part of what's there as well. And that to me is always fascinating, that we our brains and our thought processes stick to these things that make it haunted. But that is one instance. Like, why would this house, like the Myrtles plantation, right? This incredibly, why is it that this place that had all of this trauma around it, all these enslaved people, all of this awful things happened at this Myrtles plantation? Why is it those two kids haunt that mirror right there? Those two kids of the folks, and that's a discussion. I think that's a really a thing when you really dig into the paranormal and think about what is it, man. And so I love how you're saying you found these other things at the bridge, because who knows? Who knows what came first?
So it's actually interesting. When I was looking for Anna Lee, because I was like, is there any other documentation of a woman? Because she was murdered. Like, she was like very clear, blunt about it. And so I was like, is there any documentation I can find on this? But what I found, oddly enough, was that I don't even know if a woman named Helen even died at this bridge.
Right.
I know Asheville's is gonna smite me for that,
Oh,
but
sure.
it's but because in 1909, a young woman named Helen died brutally in a hotel nearby, and I wonder if that story just got transferred over to the bridge because the bridge is creepy. And
Right.
that we see that a lot in Savannah, where stories happen somewhere else and they just get slapped onto a different location. So
that's kind of the nature of ghost stories, is people attach themselves to it, and again, you talk about the different entities. It's because different people's sensibilities are labeling and kind of corralling energy, and they're like, this energy. Oh, you know what? I know a story that is similar in sensation, or when I heard it, I felt like this, and so I'm going to ascribe it that way. Because I think that's really what's happening in a lot of these cases, is we're giving energy form and shape. Where you're dealing with paranormal energy that we don't completely understand, but we're giving it form and shape by continuing the tradition of storytelling and giving people the impetus to put a shape to the shapeless. And then, of course, that energy moves in that pattern and becomes recognizable again and again and again. And people are like, oh, that's proof that this is what it is. And the truth of the matter is, of course, we don't really know. We can only say, well, these are the sensations we have. These are the information we get. And even when somebody is coming through in any of these pieces of equipment, it's like, well, it's probably trying to parlay its own existence. It's living up to expectations. It's doing things in a pattern that it feels is necessary to continue its existence and to continue going on. And then
I've always been fascinated with that. Yeah. With that concept of almost like this trickster in the paranormal, like you're saying, of this kind of almost like a tulpa type thing, or where this is a historic place, and in Savannah, New Orleans, I'm sure a lot alike, where it's almost like stories don't evolve. It's like being like thrown on top and mashed as a piece of clay. And this piece of clay was an elephant one day, and now today it's like a rhinoceros, but yet it's still the same clay, right?
Exactly.
And I think that, I've always been fascinated by that perspective of the paranormal.
Well, I think too,
is that really what we're doing?
Your example of the two children in the mirror, it makes sense that something that affects people on the widest bandwidth, the widest bandwidth would be these two kids. I think everybody who encounters this kind of haunting will have some kind of sympathy, empathy, situation, understanding of the tragedy of the loss of young life.
Right.
So like we talk about this all the time, that children ghosts are so prevalent, and they are almost a different breed of ghost, because oftentimes they're more aggressive, for one thing, like and not aggressive like they're going to beat you. It's just their presence is more inserted in a place. And a lot of that has to do with children don't have the same regard for society, the same regard for, it's like, oh, I'm dead, I probably shouldn't bother you because dead people shouldn't bother the living. That kind of, we grow up with all these rituals in our head. We go to funerals, we understand that dead people are supposed to be dead, but children, they haven't had that kind of exposure. They may not understand that this isn't just some other part of life. They died, and their spirit is like, oh, this is the part of life when I'm invisible and I can walk up the wall.
I have a superpower now.
Now I can walk through this wall. How cool is that? But I do think that when you're talking about how stories rise to the surface, when there's so much, so many terrible things that could be focused on, a lot of it is about acceptance. What are the stories that people are embracing? choosing to tell and retell, because Savannah has a long history of glossing over its darkness, glossing over the darker part of its history, and putting up a pretty face. And that pretty face does not include brutal slavery. It does not include all these.
Bless your heart, right there.
Bless your heart.
Absolutely.
And it's like, so we have a lot of genteel, lovely ghosts who just sort of sipping mint juleps and looking, out the window. But a lot of that is because the society as a whole tends to push these ghost stories so that they never have to look at the true history that truly haunts this town. The history of this town will continue to haunt it until it fully embraces the fact that it participated, not just participated, but was one of the chief architects of such misery for so long.
I will tell you though, Myrtle's Plantation is, if you have not visited it, you need to. It's in St. Francisville, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Right outside of Baton Rouge.
Yep. And it is freaky. It's a dense energy. JT and I went there 2 years ago, and I literally walked onto the property, immediately was like, oh, I was like, and I told JT, and he'll confirm this, if he was on the microphone, you'd hear him. But I literally was like, there were a lot of people hanged here, and you can feel it. But I will tell you, the most energetically, present spirit was that little girl, because they do that that ghost tour where they take you around the property at the end of the night and all that. Yeah. She was sitting in the room. Like, she knew the ghost tour was going to come in there. I saw her clear as day, just sitting in the room, just waiting for the tour to come in, because she knew that they were going to talk about her in that room. And that kind of feeds into the idea that we talk about, where she's an overfed ghost, if you will.
Don't feed the ghosts.
Don't feed the ghosts. Because
I love it.
she knew. She's like, oh, they're going to talk about me in here, so I want to hear it, and I'm going to sit here and move the doll around, because that gets me even more attention. And and all these people are like taking photos looking for her, but she's just in the corner. I'm like,
energy begets energy.
Exactly.
Well, the Myrtles is so interesting, because it's a product too of a lot of fabrications that have come in there. So it's such an interesting place, because it's I've spent enough time now with bopping through all the different southern states and all these stories, and you can almost see, if you were to tell me a ghost story, you can almost figure out when each element in a time frame of the South was put together, when the story came out. And the Myrtles has a lot of it became famous because of that plantation bed and breakfast era. And so there's a lot of really big stories at the Myrtles that surround things that were told to freak out and to attract tourism.
Right.
But it doesn't negate the other things. So, the home really has had like 10 murders there, I believe. It's like 10 separate murders. One of the owners was shot and killed by somebody we don't even know on the front steps. He crawled up the stairs in the house and died on the stairwell. It's verifiable fact. But there's also this really prevalent story about a young enslaved girl that killed. Her name's Chloe. That killed that killed the owner's children with oleander. Made a cake for oleander,
right.
and did this. And murdered these children on one of their birthday, trying to get in the good graces of the owner of the plantation, because she was going to nurse them back to health. And it's this accident gone awry. And they do talk about Chloe a good bit, but I mean, honestly, the story isn't accurate, because the children didn't all die at that time frame. Right. You can look at death records and census records. So, immediately the story is inaccurate. Then you go and you look at Chloe, and, it's really, we've got some slave schedules you can look at, and you can see who was there, and it doesn't really look like there's anybody named Chloe. Story didn't really pop up until we're doing this and all that. But at the same time, there's sightings of spirits that look like they could embody Chloe.
So
how do you marry these things, knowing the truth and knowing at the same time that you are experiencing a good bit, and where do they come from?
So the phrase I always use is, which came first, the ghost or the ghost story?
Right.
Because I think a ghost story people underestimate the human mind. They underestimate how powerful it is. They underestimate what portion of reality is dependent upon our participation. And when you tell a story that strikes to the heart, when you tell a story that is reinforced by fear or reinforced by romantic notions, then I believe that a spirit lacking form will absolutely want to be the thing that you're looking for. You know, I think that there is a service one way or the other. You know, you hear it all the time that people see these spirits, they have experiences with them, and then later you find out, oh, well, that event never happened. A good classic one is, for the longest time, the ghost of the Pirate's House here in Savannah, Georgia, was Captain Flint. And people are like, I've experienced Captain Flint. I've heard Captain Flint. As a matter of fact, Captain Flint's last words were, "Bring aft the rum." And they hear, "Bring aft the rum," to the point of saying, "Young Darby, bring aft the rum, young Darby." People are claiming that that's what they hear. Captain Flint is a fictional character. He doesn't exist. I mean, he's 100% fiction. There was never a Captain Flint. He was made up by Robert Louis Stevenson. And so when people are experiencing it, it's because they were told Captain Flint haunts this building, and that experience. And so it's like, it's not to say that there's not a pirate there, and certainly a pirate calling out for rum isn't bizarre, but it's one of those things where our minds are filling in blanks. And spiritual energy just wants that attention. They just want so desperately to participate in life, to participate in people who are of this realm. They're like, see me, participate with me, you know, let me be a member of you. I will do anything. I will be anything. You know, you want me to be Abe Lincoln? I'll be Abe Lincoln. Look, I'm Honest Abe. It's me. You know, pay attention to me. And that's one of those things, because we always talk about the difference between like a full apparition versus like a shadow versus like a mist. And I believe that those are conditions of presentation. You know, when you're fresh in somebody's memory, when you're freshly, you know, on the other side, you can maintain your looks. People will be like, "Oh, that's Jim. I recognize him because I knew Jim, and that's what he looked like." But after a while, all the people who knew Jim are dead. They see the spirit, and they're like, "Oh, there's a man. I see a man there," and you're beginning to lose definition. You're beginning to lose. You're just a man, a figure, and then it's a shadow. I see a shadow over there. There's something over there. And that's to me, in my estimation, the most dangerous spirit is the one that has lost identity, but is still present enough, you know, because by the time you're a mist, it's very hard to come back from that. Right. By the time you're just roaming around as a mist, you're probably not going to, you know, pop up and be Abe Lincoln again. So when you see that shadow and you're like, "Oh, it's the devil," that shadow's like, "Okay, I'll be the devil." It's like, "Oh, it's the goat man." It's like, "I need to be a goat man. I'll be a goat man." You know,
that's a very interesting take on it for sure. Yeah.
You know, and it brings it back to what you were saying with trickster spirits of sorts. We even have one in this building that has been very crazy on multiple occasions. It likes to transform into different things because what I've found with this one in particular, it thrives off of scaring people. Because that's the most energy you're going to get out of somebody is either laughing or scaring. In this one, it just prefers scaring. And so...
Well, it's so immediate. It's a very immediate fix. You know,
is.
It's like, boo, ah! It's like, that's an exchange. You know,
well,
I think that Disney movie, The Monsters.
Right, Monsters
yes.
Inc., right.
Yeah, he needs his canister of screams to thrive. You know, it's funny. He actually just popped out a new one a couple weeks ago while I was in Demon Room. So for those of you who didn't know, we have an immersive show. And I play the demon-possessed woman often. And so a lot of the show, I'm in there by myself. And I was getting ready, and I hear just this woman's voice sound like the creepiest old lady cackle you could imagine. Oh. It was like, ha, 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 ha. And I was like, oh God. And I was like, that is, so I just thought, you know, because the show was going on, maybe somebody's standing by the doors, and I'm hearing it. And so I was like, okay, no problem. Well, then I hear scurrying in the room. And I'm just like, okay, that's really freaky. And so then I see the woman standing in the corner of the room. And I was like, okay, that's the trickster spirit. He's pulling a new one because everybody's getting used to his normal routine. And I'm like, you picked the wrong one. You picked the wrong one, buddy. But yeah, it's just, he's done this so many times where, we had one actor who almost quit because it literally transformed to look like him in our hag costume.
Right, and mimics.
And mimicked him. And he was in the middle of the performance, and afterwards he was just bawling. He was like, I don't think I could do that again. He's like, I was paralyzed practically, And so, and I think a lot of that is, it's that level of entity where, it doesn't have identity anymore. It's just like, I'm just going to do what I know is going to freak people out because I've seen you, because that was our scariest hag, He's like, I've seen you scare all these people so many times. I'm going to scare you because it clearly works by doing what you do. And I'm like, it's the only entity like that I've ever encountered in my life, and I don't know what to do to get rid of it. I don't think we'll ever get rid of it.
I was going to say, that's definitely one of those things. Is we are always fumbling in the dark. No matter how much information we might have, there's so much more we just don't know. We just don't have all the variables. We only have this very thin veneer of what we can experience and see. And of course, Maddie has an extra ability of seeing, but it's still a very thin veneer of what the potential is, spiritually speaking.
Absolutely. And also, just on a side note, I think your name for your podcast just really embodies the entities of the South.
Oh yeah, Southern Gothic.
I love that name because it really is. Our people are dark people, naturally. And so it makes sense that our spirits would be considered Gothic and creepy, because just like even the land we live on is creepy. You go anywhere in the South and it's just kind of spooky always. There's always like a mist. There's always things like that. So I commend you on the name. I love it. It's great.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think a lot about it when it comes to the Gothic, and look at the kind of early origins of like a Dracula and that early Gothic literature, and compare the South to that, about how, Dracula in and of itself was this basis of, you have this aristocrat, this castle that has just fallen away into disrepair and this kind of creepy underbelly. But yet it was this beautiful thing, and we ignored the underbelly until we couldn't anymore. And to me, there's a lot in Southern history and this of what that aristocratic nature of plantation culture and it being this beautiful thing while we ignore what's underneath. And then you watch the kind of crumbling of these places. It aligns very well. And, and I definitely stole the name from, Faulkner in a lot of ways, or from that type of literature, thinking of it that way. But, that's what I looked at, was it from that level of that literary story of we have a truly a unique place, and we get ragged on a hell of a lot for it. But, there's a lot of beauty underneath that, or in the swamp, if you will.
Exactly.
As well.
You just got to get into the swamp to find it.
Well, people truly underestimate how beautiful a swamp is, because the word kind of evokes like boggy, messy, dirty, muddy. It's like, no, you get into a swamp, it is gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's true. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your really interesting stories. We're definitely going to have you back on, because it is so fun to hear your knowledge of just Southern history in general.
Absolutely.
And, I love it. So I wish we had more time to really dive into like every state. Maybe we'll do that sometime, but
we'll go state by state.
State by state. Exactly.
Oh gosh.
I know, a lot to go with, but again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank y'all for having me. I'll forgive you for the name from here on out. Now I'll let you go with the most haunted.
We appreciate
It's metaphoric.
It is.
Yeah, okay, all right. We'll have a draw at the end of this now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you don't already follow us on social media, make sure to follow us under Haunted City Podcast on all platforms. Also, if you are looking to become a parajunkie to see those episodes we were talking about up at Heaven's Bridge, this is your opportunity. You can find us on Patreon. We have links in all of our bios. But with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.